About our fellowship operational directives say this about membership. Membership is open to all persons who, in general, subscribe to the fellowship's purpose and principles. Signing the membership book and being introduced formally to the membership symbolizes commitment to and acceptance of the responsibilities that go with membership. It is the fellowship's hope that within the limits of any member's abilities and in line with personal choices, that members are ready to give energy, time, money, and best thought to the furthering of their liberal religious community. And that's what the requirements are. No profession of faith.
No creed.
No creed.
And this morning, we have Fritz Ozuna with us, and I have his membership
Oh, wow.
label. First of all, sign the book and then
Tell us about
a
yourself.
little bit.
All right. I don't know what the date is.
Today is the 4th.
4th of March.
2012.
Very good.
Thank
That
Very-
part even, it's a great honor. Thank you. Do you put it on? Or?
You can put it on your own self. I'm shy.
Well, surely you'll do it for you. There.
It looks very nice.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to join this group of such knowledgeable people and free thinkers. Shirley said that it might be good for me to maybe show a little bit of my work so that my friends know what it is that I do. So I can show you just a few examples, and I have them over here.
You were wise not to bring the glass.
I call myself an artist, and what I'm most known for, I work in neon, and but I don't do palm trees and flamingos. Mostly what I do is I use reflected light, and so there's neon here, but it's hidden beneath these front pieces of aluminum. And the aluminum is formed with a hammer on an anvil. And I've always, since the early 70s, loved aluminum. And then I've always loved to paint, so I don't have time to paint. So what I do is I use a computer program and a digital tablet, and I take pictures that I take of my neon work, and I turn them into what look like paintings. And this way, hopefully, I can sell prints of the work and also the work itself. And so these are pictures of this same piece right here. And actually, this one goes like this. But anyway, that's part of what I do. And I do a few other things too.
It's like stained light.
I paint with light is what is what I do. And here's an example right here. The hammered aluminum picks up the light and breaks it up. And so sometimes I don't really know what they're going to look like, but oftentimes I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to look like. And so that's a lot of what I do. And I also love photography. I had to learn photography so that I wouldn't have to pay photographers $300 a day to come and take pictures of my artwork. So I also take pictures of our beautiful scenery around here in the hill country. And this was on the Guadalupe River, or I have a place between Center Point and Comfort. So, thank you very much.
Nita.
You do hugs.
Sure I do.
Welcome.
Neat work. Very interesting.
Well, we got off to a good start on joys. Are there any other joys this morning? Yes, Vince.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say welcome to Fritz. But over and above that, I'd like to say that I feel that we're very lucky to have Nikki among us. She's done so much for this fellowship over the years, and what she does is sometimes unrecognized. But her latest contribution was to give us a computer, a table, and a chair, all of which are quite valuable. And I think Nikki deserves a good hand for all that she's done for this place.
I get more than I give.
Don't believe it.
Any other joys? And Alice, she has her guitar and she was going to offer some music this morning, and we'll just do that with the lighting of the
This is called the Freethinkers Anthem, and it goes back to the the 19th century, the middle of the 19th century, when the words and the music came together. And it's called Die Gedanken sind frei, meaning thoughts are free. So I'm sure most of you have heard this before, but if not. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts freely flower. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts give me power. No hunter can trap them, no scholar can map them, no one can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure. My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure. My thoughts will not cater to duke or dictator. No one can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. If tyrants take me and throw me in prison, my thoughts will burst free like blossoms in season. Foundations may crumble and structures may tumble, but free thinkers cry, Die Gedanken sind frei. Yes, free thinkers cry, Die Gedanken sind frei.
Wow. Not only did Alice furnish the music, but she's our speaker this morning. And I'm going to try to introduce her for the sake of our visitors, but I have to tell you, she has a list of accomplishments that would take up a very long time unless I kind of sail through it. First of all, Alice and Richard have been members of the UU Fellowship for the past 9 years. And she has traditionally presented a program every month on, every Women's History Month. and we've always enjoyed those. Alice has a master's in sociology from the University of California at San Diego. She's had a wide range of experience career-wise. She's been a social worker and counselor, a college instructor, a farm worker, a cab driver, an epidemiological researcher, and she has coordinated outreach for seniors with diabetes. She's also a published author. She's been published in the Humanist magazine, Z magazine, and Voices International. She's been active in civil rights and peace organizations. She and her husband Richard have one son who is a lawyer in Houston, 3 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Alice?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's March again. And of course, we commemorate Women's History Month. In past years, we've celebrated the lives of important American women, but today I ask you to travel with me to the 4th century of our Common Era, CE. I will tell you about a pagan woman of Greek descent who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, and whose dates by most accounts were from 370 to 415 CE. Her name was Hypatia. She was a mathematician, a philosopher, and a teacher. She is credited with being the world's first known woman mathematician, and at the time of her death, one of the world's greatest teachers of mathematics and philosophy. Though the conventions of her time discouraged women from intellectual pursuits, Hypatia, a remarkably gifted woman, had a passion for the life of the mind that overcame all obstacles. I will return to Hypatia in a moment, but first a brief history of Alexandria, Egypt, where Hypatia was born. In the 300s before the Common Era, BCE, Egypt had become part of the Greek Empire. Alexandria, Egypt's capital city, was named for the Greek ruler who conceived and executed its design, Alexander the Great. Under the Ptolemies, a dynasty of Greek Macedonian kings, Alexandria grew to be the most powerful commercial metropolis in the East, a bustling port city on the fertile Nile Delta, with over 500,000 inhabitants. Alexandria was the site of a lucrative trade in silk, linen, papyrus, and blown glass. The Museum of Alexandria today would be considered similar to a university. It was built when Ptolemy I, who had served as general under Alexander the Great, brought philosophers and writers, as well as books and manuscripts, to the city. The many thousands of books in the museum's libraries were handwritten scrolls of papyrus, a kind of vegetable paper. In the almost 300 years of the Ptolemies' rule, Alexandria became home of several great libraries that preserved classical knowledge in astronomy, physics, and mathematics, and schools of philosophy that furthered the teachings of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and others. Its university atmosphere attracted students and scholars from all parts of the world. In the halls and courtyards of Alexandria's schools of philosophy, during the reign of Ptolemy I, Euclid developed his geometry and wrote his book Elements. In Alexandria, Eratosthenes who invented the word geography, was the first person to calculate the circumference of the earth and the distance of the earth from the sun. Through the work of such scholars, Alexandria came to be recognized as the greatest center of learning outside of Athens. In addition to its libraries and schools, Alexandria was famed for the great temple of Serapis, one of the grandest monuments to pagan civilization outside of Rome. In 30 BCE, during the time of Caesar and Cleopatra, Egypt was taken over by the Roman Empire. Alexandria proved to be extremely important to Rome because one harvest from the Nile Delta provided Rome with 1/4 of its food supply for the year. Under Roman rule, before Rome adopted the Christian religion, Alexandria's great libraries, schools, and temples were respected. Its books preserved, and Greek philosophy, science, and culture continued to be taught. However, when the Roman Empire became officially Christian, with the conversion of Emperor Constantine in the early 4th century CE, all this began to change. Constantine's loyal subjects became Christian by edict, and pagan temples became churches by edict. As the rational philosopher and religious historian Mangasar Mangasarian wrote in his Death of the Classical World, the Christian religion, as soon as it got into power, turned the world about. It struck at the Roman Empire and grabbed everything it could lay its hands on: the scepter, the sword, the imperial diadem, and the throne. According to this view, not only did the nature of the Roman Empire change with the merger with Christianity, but Christianity itself changed in the process of challenging the pagan world. After it gained state power, Christianity was no longer a religion based primarily on the life and teachings of Jesus. By the time of Hypatia's birth in Alexandria in 370 CE, the Roman Empire had been officially Christian for 60 or more years and was now divided into two parts. The Western Roman Empire, ruled from Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, ruled from Constantinople. This may remind some of you, as it did me, the famous poem Sailing to Byzantium by W.B. Yeats, with its memorable lines. And therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. And the last stanza reads, once out of nature I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing, but such a form as Grecian goldsmiths make, of hammered gold and gold enameling, to keep a drowsy emperor awake, or set upon a golden bough to sing to lords and ladies of Byzantium of what is past or passing or to come. Although Christianity was the official religion throughout both regions of the Roman Empire, the empire was engaged in almost perpetual warfare with non-Christian people. There were also uprisings and conflicts within Rome itself, including rebellions within the Senate and resistance to Christianity by the Emperor Julian. As has happened in other cities throughout the empire, some Alexandrians stubbornly resisted becoming Christian. During Hypatia's life, Alexandria was a mixture of religions, including Christians, believers in the Olympic pantheon of gods, adherents to Neoplatonic thought, Jews and Gnostics, with Christians being in the majority. The city was also a conglomeration of social classes, including slaves, farmers, farm laborers, crafts workers, merchants, and scholars. With the various social classes, and with Christians, Jews, and pagans all living together, the city was known for its violent and volatile politics. Under the leadership and authority of the Bishop of Alexandria, sometimes referred to as the Patriarch of Alexandria, who was head of the official Christian church in the city, the Christians were increasing not only in number, but also in influence and power. The bishop and his followers were engaged in a power struggle with the secular authority, as represented by the prefect of Alexandria, sometimes called the governor. Even before Hypatia was born, certain Christian monks living in the desert surrounding Alexandria had become tools of the bishop, who used them to attack the symbols of pagan culture. Libraries, schools, and temples that preserved classical learning, science, and culture had come under sporadic attack, and some of the precious books and other documents from ancient Greek and Roman civilization had already been destroyed. Edward Gibbon, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, writes, "The monks who rushed with tumultuous fury from the desert distinguished themselves by their zeal and diligence. In almost every province of the Roman world, an army of fanatics sporadically invaded peaceful inhabitants, and the ruins of the fairest structures of antiquity still display the ravages of these fanatics, who alone had time and inclination to execute such laborious destruction." In 380 CE, when Hypatia was about 10 years old, Emperor Theodosius I issued an edict which commanded that all paganism be stamped out throughout the empire. In response, the mob, led by Bishop Theophilus, demolished the Alexandrian Serapeum, the edifice dedicated to the worship of the pagan god Serapis. The Serapeum had blended the elements of Egyptian and Greek art into a harmonious whole. Serapis, whose enormous statue adorned the temple, was then the most popular god of the Orient. Again from Gibbon. When Christianity gained the upper hand in Alexandria, it determined to destroy those two monuments of its powerful rival paganism, namely the library and the temple of Serapis. As Christianity tried to destroy all the monuments of paganism in Rome, it could not leave them standing in Alexandria or Constantinople or Antioch. As a result of these destructions, Alexandria began its decline as the greatest center of learning, next to Athens in the Roman Empire. In a lecture he gave to the Independent Religious Society in Chicago, Magasarian said, "Theophilus, the Bishop of Alexandria, with a cross in his hand and followed by his monks, marched onto the temple of Serapis and proceeded to pull its pillars down. When they came to strike at the colossal statue of the god, for centuries worshipped as a deity, even the Christians turned pale with superstitious awe and held their breath. Armed with a heavy axe, a Christian was hesitating to strike the first blow. Will the god tolerate the insult? Will he not crash the roof upon the heads of the sacrilegious vandals? But he struck the thundering blow right in the cheeks of Serapis, who offered no remonstrance whatever. The sun shone as usual, and the laws of nature maintained their even pace. Encouraged by this indifference of the god to defend himself, the Christian rabble rushed upon the statue and, pulling Serapis off his seat, dragged him in pieces through the streets of Alexandria, that the pagans might behold the disgrace into which their great god had fallen. Thousands of pagans, seeing how helpless their gods were to avenge this insult, deserted paganism and joined the Christians. As soon as the ground of the temple was sufficiently cleared, a church was erected on the ancient site. This event was to foreshadow a much worse destruction yet to come. This then was the world that Hypatia grew up in, a world in which the culture of her parents and ancestors was under mortal attack, a critical moment in which paganism, along with classical learning, philosophy, science, and mathematics, teetered on the brink of extinction, trying to hold its footing in face of the fanaticism of the new state religion. What was Hypatia's upbringing like? We don't know anything about Hypatia's mother, but her father was Theon, a mathematician and astronomer, and what we would now call a professor at the museum at Alexandria. As I have mentioned, the museum was like a present-day university, with classrooms, exhibits, lecture halls, and libraries. Hypatia received her early education from her father, who taught her mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy, as well as rhetoric, the then highly valued art of expression by vocal speech. Nor was her physical development neglected. She walked long distances, swam, did rowing, rode horseback, and did other physical exercises. As a young woman, she came to realize the need for sources of knowledge beyond the teachings of her father. Seeking new knowledge, she traveled to Athens and Italy, where she studied with the outstanding philosophers, mathematicians, and thinkers of her day. In his famous painting, School of Athens, the Italian Renaissance artist and architect Raphael showed a representation of Hypatia sitting among the other scholars, most or all of whom were men. It is not known for certain how long Hypatia traveled and studied abroad, but when she returned to Alexandria, she became the librarian in the museum's main library, the last librarian before that library was destroyed. She was also a renowned lecturer at the museum's School of Neoplatonist Philosophy, where she taught the works of Aristotle, Plato, and Plotinus to both Christians and pagans of Alexandria, and to students from Rome, Athens, and all the great cities of the empire who traveled to Alexandria to attend her lectures. At about 400 CE, she became head of the Neoplatonist school. It was, by the way, Hypatia's favorite philosopher, Plotinus, who was the first person to use the term Neoplatonism. Because of her many years of teaching the philosophy of Neoplatonism, it is thought that she would have written books on this subject, but none of these works have survived. It is believed that much of Hypatia's writings were destroyed with the destruction of the museum's library. So we have little left of her direct teachings in her lectures on philosophy and Neoplatonism. But in his book, Little Journeys to the Homes of the Great, Hubbard quotes from writings about Hypatia's lectures that have come down to us from several people who attended those lectures. According to these reports, she taught, among other things, that any fixed, formal, and dogmatic religion would paralyze the minds of men and make the human race in time incapable of thought. We learn to think by thinking, and if the